Have you ever stopped to think about how a simple act of kindness can change the course of a life? How many times have we seen people around us struggling with adversities, wondering what could make a difference? What if I told you that a small action, done at the right moment, could be the first step to pull someone from despair and lead them to overcoming? This is the story of Miguel Oliveira, a man who, after losing everything, found, in an unexpected gesture of compassion, the strength to change the course of his life. Miguel, 32, was like many of us. He had dreams, worked hard, and believed that success was just a matter of time. With a stable job in a home appliance store and plans to buy his first house, he lived with hope. But as life often teaches us, everything can change in the blink of an eye. First came the economic crisis that affected his hometown, Villa Esperanza, a small and charming industrial community. The impact was swift and devastating. The company where Miguel worked reduced its staff, and he became one of the casualties. With unemployment came overdue bills, and soon the loss of his home, his security, and worst of all, his self-confidence. Living on the streets was a reality Miguel had never imagined for himself. He described this experience as a dive into an endless void. The cold nights, the persistent hunger, and the empty gaze of the people around him hurt him more than the physical hardships. I was no longer Miguel, he thought. I was just another invisible. The weight of indifference made him question if he would ever find a way out. However, something inside him resisted. A small voice told him not to give up, even when everything around him seemed to say otherwise. Days and nights dragged on, but Miguel still clung to the memory of who he once was, as if it were a thread of hope. It was at the peak of despair that his story began to change. And ironically, it wasn't due to a grand event, but rather something simple, unexpected, and profoundly human. Miguel often asked himself, "How did I get here?" His new reality felt like an endless nightmare. The streets of Villa Esperanza, once so familiar, had become a hostile terrain. The cold sidewalks, the suspicious glances, and the overwhelming loneliness were a constant reminder of everything he had lost. The first days without a roof over his head were a shock. He tried to ask for help from acquaintances, but found doors closed or excuses that only discouraged him further. Without a support network, he had to learn quickly how to survive. Finding food became a daily challenge, and the nights were filled with a cold that seemed to pierce even his soul. Miguel often sat in a busy square in the city center, watching people rush by, caught up in their own lives. He noticed how they would avert their gaze when they saw him, as if he weren't even there. It's worse to be ignored than to be rejected, he thought. Amidst this emptiness, his mind would drift back to the days when he was seen, heard, and respected. The physical challenges were immense, but the true weight lay in the internal struggle. He was consumed by feelings of guilt and shame. He thought of his mother, who had always believed in his potential, and wondered how she would react if she saw him in this situation. At the same time, he fought against the stigma society placed on him. After all, in the eyes of many, he was no longer a man. He was just a homeless man. Even so, Miguel resisted fully giving in to despair. During the toughest nights, when sleep seemed impossible, he would look up at the sky, trying to find comfort in the stars. If they can shine even in the dark, why couldn't I find a way to shine again? He thought, holding on to this idea like a shipwrecked sailor clinging to a plank. It was then that he began to realize something fundamental. He needed a starting point. He didn't know what it would be, but he was determined to search for a spark that could reignite his life. As he wandered the streets of Villa Esperanza, Miguel had no idea that the first step toward his transformation was about to happen. And it wouldn't come from an institution or a social program, but from an ordinary woman with an extraordinary heart. It was a cold afternoon, with the biting autumn wind sweeping through the streets of Villa Esperanza. Miguel walked slowly through the city center, his gaze lost. Like on other days, he expected nothing from anyone. He was simply looking for something to eat or a place to rest without being chased away. At the corner of a busy avenue, he stopped. There was no reason to keep walking, and his energy was almost depleted. He leaned against a brick wall, trying to ignore the sound of cars and distant conversations passing around him. It was then that something unexpected happened. A middle-aged woman, carrying a shopping bag, stopped in front of him. She had a kind expression, and her eyes conveyed something Miguel hadn't seen in a long time: empathy. "Are you all right, my son?" she asked in a soft but firm tone. Miguel was taken aback. He didn't know how to respond. He wasn't used to being approached by strangers, much less in such a direct and kind way. "I'm surviving," he replied, his voice low, trying to hide his vulnerability. The woman, Dona Helena, smiled faintly, but there was sadness in her eyes. She placed the bag on the ground and, from inside her coat, took out a 20 reis note. "I know it's not much, but maybe this will help you get something to eat today." Miguel hesitated. He didn't want to accept, but he also knew that refusing would only be an empty pride. He took the note with trembling hands and murmured, "Thank you. It's not just the money, dear. It's for you to remember that there are still people who care," said Dona Helena, looking directly into his eyes. "You are not invisible. No matter what life has done, you are still capable of starting over." Those words hit him in an unexpected way. For months, Miguel had felt like a shadow, an unwanted presence on the streets of Villa Esperanca. But in that moment, he remembered that he was a human being, someone with value. Dona Helena didn't just give him money. She spoke with Miguel for a few minutes, asking about his story, without a trace of judgment. He briefly told her about losing his job, his home, and how he ended up in his current situation. She listened attentively and, in the end, said something that would echo in his mind in the days to come. "We all have turning points in life. Maybe this is yours." After they said goodbye, Miguel stood at the corner for a few more minutes, holding that note as if it were much more than money. To him, that gesture was a sign. Not just a sign that he could eat something that day, but that perhaps it was possible to believe again. For the first time in months, Miguel felt a spark of hope. He knew there was still much to face, but that unknown woman had planted a seed of transformation in him. From that moment on, he decided that he didn't just want to survive. He wanted to start over. With Dona Helena's gesture still fresh in his memory, Miguel felt a spark of determination ignite in his chest. However, he knew that simply wishing for a better future wouldn't be enough. Starting over would be an immense challenge, especially for someone who was at the brink of physical and emotional exhaustion. His first step was to find a place where he could sleep safely at night. After asking other homeless people, he learned about an organization called Casa Nova Esperanca, which offered shelter and meals for people in vulnerable situations. Although he was initially reluctant, he decided to give it a try. The welcome he received was warm. Upon entering the shelter, Miguel found a simple yet welcoming environment. He was greeted by Rosa, a volunteer who had worked there for years. "Welcome, Miguel. Here, you'll have a place to rest, but we also want to help you take the next step in your life," Rosa said with a sincere smile. At first, Miguel was skeptical. He didn't want to get his hopes up, afraid of being disappointed again. But gradually, he realized that this place wasn't just a roof over his head, it was an opportunity. In addition to meals and a bed, the shelter offered psychological counseling, skill-building workshops, and most importantly, a network of people willing to help. During the first few weeks, Miguel focused on regaining his physical and mental health. He participated in group discussions with other residents and discovered that he wasn't alone in his struggles. Each story of overcoming adversity he heard fueled his determination. One of the most memorable moments came when he participated in an emotional control workshop. The instructor asked everyone to write down something that kept them stuck in the past, and then share it with the group. Miguel hesitated, but as he listened to others speak of their pain, he found the courage to speak. "I feel ashamed. Ashamed of not being able to keep my life on track, of being a burden," he said, his voice choking. The group listened in silence. Then Rosa responded gently, "Miguel, we all fall at some point, but true strength lies in getting back up. And you're here, trying. That's already more than many can do." Those words stayed with him. Miguel realized that he didn't have to carry the weight of the past alone. With his confidence slowly restored, he began looking for work. He knew it would be difficult to land a stable job, but he was willing to accept any opportunity. He walked the streets of Villa Esperanca, handing out resumes and asking at local stores and businesses. After weeks of frustrating attempts, Miguel found a small cleaning supplies store in the industrial district. The owner, Mr. Augusto Ribeiro, was a middle-aged man with a sharp gaze. "Why should I hire you, Miguel?" he asked directly, after hearing a brief version of Miguel's story. Miguel took a deep breath before responding. "Because I'm not the same man I was months ago. I know what it's like to lose everything, and that's taught me the value of every opportunity. If you give me this chance, I promise I'll dedicate myself more than anyone else." Mr. Augusto studied him for a few seconds before responding. "All right, kid. Start tomorrow. Let's see what you're capable of." That moment marked a turning point in Miguel's journey. It was a simple job, but it meant so much more. It was proof that he still had something to offer. In the days that followed, Miguel worked hard, learning everything he could about the business. Mr. Augusto quickly noticed his potential and began sharing valuable lessons on management and discipline. Over time, Miguel wasn't just an employee, he became someone who inspired those around him. Each small victory, like paying for his own meal or helping a customer, reinforced his belief that he was on the right path. Miguel still had a long way to go, but he was no longer the man who sat in the square, lost and invisible. He was building a new version of himself, step by step, with courage and determination. Miguel found in his work with Mr. Augusto Ribeiro more than just a job. He found a chance to rewrite his story. The small cleaning supplies store became his safe haven. Every task he completed was a reminder that he was still capable, that his skills and dedication could make a difference. Mr. Augusto, a reserved but observant man, began to invest more time in guiding him. He taught Miguel about things beyond the job itself: financial organization, strategies to attract customers, and even the challenges of managing people. Miguel, to succeed, you need to do more than what's expected. The basics won't impress anyone. If you want to grow, be excellent, Mr. Augusto would say as they reviewed the store's inventory. These lessons resonated with Miguel, who now saw possibilities that had once seemed out of reach. However, the journey was far from easy. Even with a job, Miguel's life was still marked by challenges. He had to balance basic bills, save up for a permanent place to live, and deal with the emotional scars from his time on the streets. One particularly difficult night, when he felt overwhelmed, Miguel recalled Dona Helena's words, "You are not invisible." Those words motivated him to keep going, even when despair seemed to be winning. As the months passed, Miguel began to stand out at the store. Not only did he perform his tasks well, but he also came up with ideas that helped improve the store's operations. One day, he suggested to Mr. Augusto that they create a delivery system to serve customers who couldn't make it to the store. "That's a bold idea, Miguel, but I'll trust you to make it work," Mr. Augusto replied. Miguel embraced the challenge with enthusiasm. He helped organize the deliveries, created a simple schedule for orders, and personally made sure to serve customers at the beginning. The initiative worked, and the store's business grew significantly. With a stable income, Miguel was able to rent a small room in a boarding house. It wasn't luxurious, but it was his own space. Entering that room for the first time was a special moment. He sat on the bed, looked around, and felt something that had seemed distant for so long: pride in himself. But the greatest milestone came when Mr. Augusto made him an unexpected offer. "Miguel, you have talent for more than this. Have you ever thought about starting your own business?" The question caught him off guard. He had never considered something so big, but Mr. Augusto continued, "I see how hard you work and how much you've learned. I know it's early, but you have vision. If you want, I can help you take the next step." In the days that followed, Miguel reflected deeply on the offer. The idea of starting his own business felt intimidating, but also exciting. He knew it would be risky, but for the first time in years, he felt ready to take on a bigger challenge. With the help of Mr. Augusto and a local microcredit program, Miguel began planning what would become his own company. He decided to focus on something he knew well: cleaning and maintenance services for small businesses and residences. The first few months were intense. Miguel worked double shifts, dividing his time between planning the new business and his responsibilities at the store. He knew every decision was crucial, but he also recognized that all the effort was worth it. When he finally opened his business, called ProServe Cleaning and Maintenance, he was emotional as he hung the sign on the door of his small office. It was the symbol of everything he had overcome, of all the steps he had taken since that day when Dona Helena helped him on the corner. Now Miguel was no longer just a man surviving. He was a businessman, someone who was building a future with his own hands. ProServe Cleaning and Maintenance started small, with just Miguel and 2 temporary employees. He knew that every closed contract was crucial to establishing the business in the market and building its reputation. Over time, thanks to the quality of his services and word of mouth from customers, orders began to grow. Miguel faced the challenges of growth with the same focus that had helped him escape the streets. He studied at night, watching videos and reading business management materials, while dedicating his days to leading his team and serving customers. Every difficulty that arose, from payment delays to supplier issues, was treated as a lesson. His relationship with Mr. Augusto Ribeiro remained essential. Even after starting his own company, Miguel continued to seek advice from his mentor. During one conversation, Mr. Augusto encouraged him to go beyond the financial aspect of the business. "Miguel, you've achieved what many thought was impossible. But true success isn't just about making money. It's about transforming lives. These words stayed in Miguel's mind. He knew that his story was not unique. There were many people like him who needed a chance to start over. It was then that he decided to create a program within his company called Nova Jornada, New Journey, to help people in vulnerable situations reintegrate into the job market. The program started simply. Miguel offered temporary jobs and basic training for individuals coming from shelters or social projects. The goal was not only to offer a salary, but also to prepare these individuals to rebuild their lives. One of the first participants was Joao, a 24-year-old young man who had lost everything after a series of family problems. Initially, Joao showed insecurity, but with Miguel's support and the team's encouragement, he began to regain his confidence. "Do you really believe I can change?" Joao asked Miguel during a conversation. "I don't just believe, Joao, I know you can. Look at me. If I could do it, so can you," Miguel responded with conviction. These interactions not only strengthened the participants of the program, but also reminded Miguel of his own journey. With every person he helped, he felt more determined to expand the impact of his company. As the Nova Jornada program grew, Miguel sought partnerships with other organizations and entrepreneurs in Villa Esperanca. He organized meetings to share his experience and inspire others to get involved in the cause. These initiatives began to transform the community. People who had once been ignored now had real opportunities to rebuild their lives. However, growth also brought new challenges. Managing a larger team, dealing with market competition, and balancing social and financial demands required skill and resilience. At one point, Miguel found himself on the brink of exhaustion. It was during a night of reflection that he remembered Dona Helena's gesture. He decided to look for her, wanting to share how that small act of kindness had changed his life. After a few attempts, he managed to find her at her modest home, still in the same neighborhood where she had approached him. "Dona Helena, I'm Miguel, the man you helped on the street months ago. I wanted you to know that your gesture changed everything for me," he said, deeply moved. Dona Helena listened carefully, surprised and touched by the visit. "Oh, my son, I only did what any person should do. But it's you who deserves the credit for transforming your life," she responded, holding his hand. The conversation with Dona Helena renewed Miguel's energy. He understood that challenges were part of the process, but his mission was greater than just himself. In the following months, ProServe grew even further, expanding its services to other cities in the region. Miguel continued to balance the challenges of business growth with his passion for helping people. Each new hire through the Nova Jornada program was a reminder that true success isn't just about thriving, it's about lifting others up along the way. The growth of ProServe cleaning and maintenance was not just a reflection of Miguel's hard work. He had become a symbol of resilience and transformation in Villa Esperanca. People who knew his story saw in the company more than just a service provider. They saw an opportunity for hope and a new beginning. As the business expanded into neighboring cities, Miguel began to face a new type of challenge: how to maintain the values that had defined his journey while dealing with the complexities of a growing company. One of the most urgent issues was ensuring that the Nova Jornada program remained a priority. With the increasing demand for services, there was a temptation to focus solely on the financial aspects of the business. Miguel knew that he needed allies to maintain balance. So he decided to form a team dedicated exclusively to the program. He promoted Rosa, the volunteer he had met at Casa Nova Esperanca, to lead the social inclusion initiatives. Rosa had experience and, most importantly, shared Miguel's vision that everyone deserved a second chance. "Rosa, I need Nova Jornada to grow with the same strength as the business. I want more people to have the opportunities one had," Miguel said during a meeting. "Trust me, Miguel. We will continue changing lives, one at a time," Rosa responded with a confident smile. In addition to strengthening the program, Miguel began investing in technology to professionalize his company's management. He acquired financial planning software and team management tools, which helped him organize growth without losing control. He also began attending business events, where he shared his story and made connections that could open new opportunities for ProServe. One such event was a social entrepreneurship forum, where Miguel was invited to speak. He talked about his journey, from the moment he lost everything to the day he decided to start over. His presentation moved the audience, but what impacted him the most was the number of people who approached him afterward to say that his story had inspired changes in their own lives. Among these people was Anna, a businesswoman interested in replicating the Nova Jornada model in her city. "Miguel, do you think it would be possible to adapt your program for another region?" she asked. "I don't just think it's possible, I believe we need to do it. The more people we reach, the better," Miguel replied. This conversation marked the beginning of a new phase in Miguel's journey, sharing his social impact model with other businesses. He and Ana began to develop a manual with guidelines for Nova Jornada, including how to structure training, integrate participants into the job market, and form partnerships with local organizations. At the same time, Miguel realized that his leadership needed to evolve. He started attending courses on people management and coaching, learning how to be an inspiring leader and create a strong company culture. His team was growing rapidly, but he made it a point to get to know each new employee, especially those coming from the inclusion program. Among the new hires was Carlos, a 50-year-old man who had lost his job after a local factory went bankrupt. Carlos came to the program insecure, thinking that his age would be an obstacle to starting over. "Miguel, I don't know if I can keep up with the pace here," he said on his first day of training. "Carlos, everyone has their own pace, but what matters is not giving up. We all have something valuable to offer," Miguel replied. With support and patience, Carlos excelled in the team, becoming one of ProServe's most dedicated employees. His story served as a reminder to Miguel that there is no age limit or specific condition for starting over. There just needs to be an opportunity and the will to try. As the company consolidated its position in the market, Miguel began exploring new services. He noticed that many clients were looking for integrated maintenance solutions, such as gardening and painting. Based on this demand, he decided to expand ProServe's portfolio, offering comprehensive packages for businesses and residences. This expansion brought new contracts and increased the company's visibility, but it also required Miguel to rethink his organizational structure. He promoted team leaders, delegated responsibilities, and trusted his employees' talents to maintain the quality standard. Despite the challenges, Miguel never lost sight of the initial purpose of his journey. He continued to visit shelters and attend meetings with people in vulnerable situations. In every conversation, he shared his story, showing that starting over was possible, even when everything seemed lost. Over time, ProServe became more than just a successful business. It became a movement of transformation. People from different cities came to learn from Miguel, inspired by his vision of a more just and inclusive world. And as he looked at everything he had built, Miguel knew that he was just getting started. His mission was not only to change lives, it was to create a legacy that would continue to inspire generations. As ProServe Cleaning and Maintenance solidified its position as a reference in its industry, Miguel knew that the true success of his journey was not in the numbers of his company, but in the impact it had on people's lives. His vision of a fairer and more inclusive future never left his heart, and he knew the path ahead would not just be about expanding his business, but about continuing to transform his community and, eventually, society. With the Nova Jornada program gaining strength in several cities, Miguel began to be recognized not only as a business leader, but also as a leader in the movement of social reintegration. Companies from various sectors approached him to learn how to implement an inclusion model within their own organizations. Miguel accepted these invitations, but always with the vision that social reintegration was not a temporary project, but a continuous responsibility. At an international entrepreneurship event, he shared his life story with a global audience, making it clear that his mission was greater than any profit. He wanted to leave a legacy of transformation and opportunity for those who needed it most. "What I have learned in my journey is simple. A gesture of kindness can trigger a revolution, and this revolution begins within us. There is no new beginning without faith and action. The path may be difficult, but the reward is a life worth living," Miguel said, with emotion in his voice. During this event, Ana, his partner in the expansion of the Nova Jornada program, stood by his side, observing the impact of his story. She knew that Miguel had started something greater, something that could not be measured by contracts or profits alone. He had planted a seed of change, and now what he was cultivating were stories of people who, like him, had found a second chance. The Nova Jornada program began to be replicated in other regions, and Miguel started forming partnerships with NGOs, local governments, and business owners to expand his support network. Each new person entering the program, each new job created, was a small victory for him and his team. Among the participants of the program, stories like Carlos began to multiply. He now led a team at ProServe, becoming a living example that it is never too late to start over. Joao, the young man Miguel had helped early in his journey, opened his own gardening services business, hiring other members of the program. These examples began to form a network of entrepreneurs who, once on the margins of society, were now thriving and, more importantly, helping others to rise. Miguel knew that what he had created was not just a company or a social program. It was a support network that would transcend generations. However, the challenges didn't disappear. As the program and the company grew, Miguel had to learn to delegate more, trust his team, and balance his personal life with work demands. In one of his most challenging moments, he had a conversation with Rosa, his friend and partner. "Miguel, you've created something incredible, but you need to remember to take care of yourself, too. Your work is vital, but without you, all of this movement would be impossible." Rosa was right. Miguel realized that to continue his mission, he needed to maintain his balance. He began to take more time for himself, to reflect and recharge his energy, ensuring that his vision remained strong and clear. Over time, ProServe became one of the leading references in corporate social responsibility, being recognized with awards for sustainability and inclusion. Miguel's company not only hired people from vulnerable situations, but also created educational and health programs for the surrounding communities. Miguel began being invited to discuss public policies focused on social reintegration, and his voice became one of the most influential in Brazil when it came to including people at risk. He knew that, by helping others, he was helping himself find a deeper purpose. In one of his most important lectures, Miguel concluded with a thought that summarized his entire journey. "I am no longer the man who lived on the streets, lost and without direction. I am proof that when we give ourselves a chance to start over, we can not only change our own lives, but also the lives of many others. The true legacy is not what you build, but the impact you leave on people's lives." As he looked toward the future, Miguel no longer had doubts about his path. He had rewritten his own story, and now he was helping thousands of others to do the same. The legacy he was creating was not just business-driven, but social and human, a true revolution that began with a simple act of kindness and now spread like an unyielding flame of transformation. Now that you've learned the inspiring story of Miguel, it's time to reflect on the power of second chances and how a simple act of kindness can transform lives. Miguel's journey reminds us that no matter how difficult the situation, there is always an opportunity to start over and make a difference, both in our own lives and in the lives of others. You too can be part of this transformation. If you believe in the power of second chances, share your thoughts below in the comments. How can you apply the power of a second chance in your own life or in the life of someone around you? Thank you for following this story. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories like this one. Until next time, and remember, it's never too late to start over.